And joining us now, of course, she's in her third season as the head coach at UCF. Of course, top 25 of all the national polls. I speak of Coach Bear, Sydney Ball-Malone, joining us here. Coach, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Elo. Thanks for having me again. How are you?
Doing all right. Unique circumstances. What was it like for you in the fall and now here as you get ready to start the season in preparing your team in these unique settings?
Yeah, well, we had to be creative. And I mean, I'm sure you've heard from everybody, it's just been different. But it's something where there's so many unknowns that you can't have any expectations of like, okay, we planned this and it's definitely going to go through with the week of what it looks like. So I think it's allowed us to be creative. I think for our student athletes, it's created adversity that they've had to go through, and they've gotten stronger. But at the same time, they really value team connection and just the team bonding. And so that's something that we've done in successful ways, whether it be through Zoom or 15 feet social distance, trying to get to know your teammate. So it's been interesting, but we've made it through it, and can't believe we're a week away. It's crazy.
What have you learned about yourself through going through this? Because I've talked to a lot of different coaches, and they've said they've learned some things that they wouldn't have thought about even if it wasn't for the circumstances that they're in, that now that they figured they might do this more, certain activities or things like that moving forward. What have you learned about yourself as you've gone through this? And what have you learned about your group?
Well, I really like, and I didn't mention this before, but we practiced in pods for quite some time. I don't like that the team is separated, but at the same time, the amount of reps that we got was pretty valuable. And the way we separated the pods, normally when we're doing small groups or individuals in the beginning of fall, we break them up by position. This year we broke them up by a team. So we had two different teams. And so they could essentially, play a full infield outfield defense if we needed to, or the pitchers could throw to their pods hitters with some defenders. And I really liked that. We were able to focus on a lot of our newcomers coming in and learning our relays and destinations, and just some of our defensive plays and how we run our offense. And so there was a lot of one-on-one. Tiresome for the coaches, but we were practicing quite often. We had a lot of double days. But what I learned through it all was, we did the Nights Unlimited. We let them play games as often as we could, because they weren't going to get those games. And for the newcomers, for the freshmen, that was really important to us, that they were going to get some game time, so that we could see them before we actually implemented our teaching curriculum. So we played a lot of scrimmages, and we let them, we kind of mimicked the Athletes Unlimited to a T, as far as we had captains, they chose their teams, they chose their lineup, that if they didn't know how to enter somebody correctly, they actually got dinged for it. So they learned the game in a strategy way. And it was neat to have the captains call the coaches and say, hey, so in these scenarios, who do you play in this position when someone was pitching? And why do you move this person to that position? And so that's what I learned, is they got to kind of take ownership in their development and almost the coaching side of things.
Yeah, and it's funny, you're not the first coach I've mentioned that used the system from Athletes Unlimited there. That's been a bit popular there. Was there a Kat Osterman that dominated like she did there, which is kind of wild there? And obviously Victoria Haywood, I know a friend of the program, did very well. She'll be back actually for that second season of Athletes Unlimited, just got announced. So that was fun to see there, a little softball in the fall there. And really, I think a lot of coaches picked up on that to help them through practices.
Oh yeah, for it, just the intensity that the girls got to see over the summer of how these athletes played, not only for their team but individually. And what was cool is the individual points I mean, it was hard to continue to stay on top if your team didn't win innings. And so they got to know the importance of that. But, and you mentioned a good name in Victoria Hayward, a familiar name is our very first week of captains. One of them actually reached out to her and said, how did you pick your team? Because she was our director of ops. So they had her contact info, and she said, hey, when you're a captain, like, what was your scenario? And I think the information that she gave, and I don't know if I'm giving like the secret information. She said, I didn't worry about defense. I worried about my pitching and my hitters. And she said, defense will fall in line, especially if you have the pitchers that you want. And that captain actually went 3-0 that week. So it was pretty cool to see how she took that time to really invest in it. But you would think it was Aaliyah White straight out the gate, and it wasn't. But then she was a captain the last 3 weeks. So Jada Cody was in there a little bit. I believe Gianna was in there once or twice. But it started out with Kira and Shannon. So we did some like little activities and events to get the first two captains. And so it was Kira Klarkowski and Shannon Doherty that started it off.
Well, as you could sense, I mean, it's competitive. I mean, and then I could tell that. I remember in Athletes Limited, everybody had their own little strategy. Cat would take wins Vekas all the time because they had a good partnership from a catcher pitcher standpoint. So I don't think we're breaking like secret codes on like draft strategies at Athletes Unlimited. I think they'll be fine. I think Victoria will be more than good with that. Big roster. Obviously, the extra year. We talked about this last time we had you on. You get Aaliyah White back. You get Jasmine Esparza back. Kira Klarkowski back from the extra year of eligibility that the NCAA gave the spring athletes for 2020. So all your seniors except Aubrey Johnson returns. Aubrey had a prior commitment from an academic standpoint, so that's why she didn't return. Which is kind of, I mean, the people don't realize that about softball players is a lot of times you got to make plans while you're playing, life after softball and things like that. But what has it been like to have this expanded roster and having those seniors back as a part of it as being the leaders?
Well, I mean, to be able to return your complete starting lineup is awesome. And what's even more special about it is I couldn't tell you what our starting lineup is for next weekend. And that's because of some of our newcomers. And those returners are just super excited to have even more competition. So just having that maturity, that experience, and I'm even seeing just a even stronger side in leadership from all three of them. We are, Aubrey Johnson, and I need to talk about her. I know she's not coming back or isn't back with us, but you don't realize what you had until it's not there. And her leadership was just, we haven't found the person that like kind of takes over where Aubrey left off. And I think that's going to be very difficult. It's going to probably take a couple people, because Aubrey was really special when it came to leadership and when it came to commanding attention and focusing on the task at hand. And so as a coach, I mean, there's just days where I'm like, I need Aubrey to tell him, and so that's also something that I've learned is to let our leaders really lead and learn, and sometimes make those mistakes as well. So, but having everyone back, and then along with our newcomers, and we did a little activity in the fall where we had everybody create their starting lineup with, I believe we had 30 at the time. And one of our main starters, who was our home run contributor, didn't start herself off in the starting lineup. And she said, I'm getting outplayed right now. And so that's the culture that these girls have allowed the coaches to create, but then also have just embraced. And so that's what's fun to see, is everyone come back, and those three seniors come back and know, like, there's no guarantee with what I had last year and who I was last year. It could look different this year. So,
well, you mentioned Aubrey. She was that veteran that did, whatever you asked her to do, she would do. If you played her at second, she played second. If you moved her to left field, she did. Whatever you did. And I thought that set a great example for everybody else because you use your bench. You're one of the few, and I kind of told you that I feel like the one positive is from having the expanded roster because I've talked to coaches there, but like, man, I don't know what this is kind of new to me. You could probably adapt more than other coaches can because you use your bench as a weapon. You have defined roles. You like to have players as defensive specialists to come in during the game or offensive specialists and mix them around. You're one of the few coaches I've seen that won't burn a player just for the sake of burning a player. There's a purpose behind using them. And I think that could help you as kind of manage this expanded roster, right?
Oh, absolutely. And what's cool too is, you think, well, we have some of these freshmen that could really be impact players, maybe, in the years to come. And should we redshirt them? And, I'd be lying if I didn't say that we didn't talk about that, but those freshmen want to play and they want to be a part of the program. And they even said, this is the best team I've ever been a part of. I want to play. And I know like the seniors have told us that you use your roster. And so we know that we'll get our opportunity if we continue to keep working. So it was a cool reminder of, that connection that we have, coaches and players. The team knows what to expect. They know if something's not working or if there's a matchup, we're going to use it and they like it. And so that's fun. It allows me, like you said, Elo, that's one of my strengths. It allows me to like really coach the way I want to coach without having to worry about the emotions behind it.
Pitching staff, of course, Aaliyah returns, is on the verge of breaking a lot of records, especially the wins record. I know she doesn't like hearing about that stuff. She's focused more on winning. What has it meant what have you seen from her this fall? And then obviously you got G Mancha back, and then you've got Brianna back, Brianna Vasquez, and those three together, they were kind of blending in 2020. It was starting to click before the season shut down. Now they get them back together here, part of a deeper staff this year.
Yeah. We call them the three-headed monster. And rightfully so. In the beginning of Nights Unlimited, I couldn't tell you who was the ace because everyone brought their A game when they came back. I mean, those pitchers were very hungry over summer. And I think that Gianna hit she just kind of got to that spot against Fullerton in her very last game. And she didn't want to stop, right? Aaliyah too, she threw very well in California. And I mean, Bree threw well throughout the small season that we had. So it was cool to see how everyone was kind of highlighted in a way during Nights Unlimited. And honestly, what I think that they're going to be most prepared in games because they played so many games against our hitters. And we had to remind them, look, you're a top 25 team. So you're facing top 25 hitters every day. And I mean, some of them had to face the same hitter in like a Shannon Doherty or a Jules Wilson. And to get them out in 12 games, that's hard. I don't care who you are. And so they learned how to play the game at a higher level and really come around and, learn scouting reports and see tendencies and see adjustments. And so I'm really excited for that pitching staff, along with some freshmen that came in, and we have a couple sophomores that also didn't get a ton of playing time last year, but still, I mean, they kind of held them off and in Nights Unlimited as well.
Offensively in 2020, you hit 310 as a team. It's shattered a lot of offensive records, runs scored, slugging, on base when the season ended. And what people don't realize is that was with one of the toughest schedules in the country. I think it was like top 10 toughest conference schedule. So it wasn't like you were hitting off, an easy schedule. And an improved 50-point improvement, batting average, 310 in 2020 from your first year in 2019 to 260. I remember when you were brought in, you were named the head coach. People talk, the big thing they talked about was your offense. You were number one batting average when your last year at Boise State, which is kind of funny now looking back because as we'll get, people now realize you're really a pitcher hardcore. Like you were one of the greatest ever in Pacific. You kind of got into coaching as a pitching coach, but you also have now have an offensive philosophy. You've talked about it in NFCA conventions, even spoken to your peers about that. Did that jump, was it quicker than you thought? Was it on schedule what you thought when you first got here as far as with the offensive philosophy and the players kind of clicking?
Well, I think that really the offensive mind, I mean, I've been a two-way player. And so that offensive mind really had to come about in Boise. We had to score runs because people were going to score runs. I mean, the ball went a long way. It traveled, and so we had to learn how to win, even if we were going to give up some runs. And so that's kind of where I learned that. But as far as answering your question, it did go quite faster than I expected. And, those numbers that you talk about, those dropped dramatically when we went to California too. We still had great numbers. I mean, I think we talked about this before, but our strikeouts doubled just in that week in California, and we knew we prepared for it. So it would have been interesting to see that season play out with those offensive players. And, once we got into, because we faced, I think, every game an All-American pitcher out in California. And so did it happen quicker than I expected? Yes. I think some key transfers came in and helped with that, along with the freshmen. And then, we train every day. We kind of set them up for failure, and they have to learn how to deal with it. And that first year is tough. It's a grind, not only physically, but just emotionally, mentally. We're telling you to hit something where you may not even hit the ball off of one of the machines, the way we have it set up, out of 25 pitches. And I just kept telling them, stick to it, you'll get it. And then when we came back in fall, we had a freshman and a senior hitting off the same machine, and the freshman swinging and missing, and the senior is acting like it's BP. And we have it set up to let's set them up for failure. And the freshman's just like, sweating it and just like, what's going on? I think I can hit the ball. I don't know what's going on. And the senior said, believe me, just keep going. We've been through that too. And so we can swing. We're great hitters, but their mentality is why they are such a great offensive team. They identified, we have our identity. We know what we like to do. We know what we're great at, and we like to use all of our skills. So, I do pinch myself every day during BP because it's really fun to watch. And I try not to let them see my excitement, and the mask is great in that way. They can't see my smile. I'll be like, it was pretty good today. I think we can get better, because I constantly want them to be hungry. So, with the offensive story of this group and just their buy-in, they want to be that complete team, and they are.
And you mentioned some of the new faces that helped was Justine Molina, who came over from Boise State. Second base was kind of like your 2-out RBI machine. Hit over 300. It seemed like every RBI she hit was with 2 outs in the lineup, no matter where you put her in the lineup. And then Georgia Blair had 6 homers, has power to all fields. Really showed power that really a lot of the UCF fans hadn't seen maybe since UCF Hall of Famer Stephanie Best, who could hit to all fields. Those two made a big contributions. And then Shannon Doherty hit 440 in her freshman year, was chasing Stephanie's freshman record for, games with a consecutive base hit streak. Jada Cody at third base at the corner. All were new faces last year that delivered right away and are back this year.
Yeah, it's interesting because I just spoke with Shannon and yesterday, and we talked about setting goals. And you talk about her success last year, and she said, I'd like to set some goals this year. And I thought, well, you're going to be pretty darn good if you didn't set any last year, because what you accomplished was amazing. But what's so awesome about Shannon is she does not look at the stats. All she cares about is, what's the situation? What does my team need me to do? Like, that's her favorite part about the offense. And so, like you said, just adding all of those players, we have 3 freshmen still because they got their year back in Jada Cody, Jules Wilson, Shannon Doherty, and they're going to be in the middle of the lineup or top of the lineup for a long time. So that's fun to see. And like you said, Justine Molina is that thorn in your side. Just when you think, you got her, you don't. And I would say that even on defense. But I'll tell you this, she's our defender. She can hit. She's our clutch hitter. But the reason why she's so spectacular is because she is our defender. And that's what people want to come and watch when they come to watch us, is what she does out there. The hitting is a bonus, and just her clutch hitting, her relentless, just her mentality of she doesn't give up until the umpire says you're out. So yes, that she's definitely turned it on for us in that first weekend last year. Georgia Blair is just special. The power that she has, I love how you talk about her power to all fields. Your observation is just spot on with her. She is, when she's pulling the ball to left side, we kind of say, hey, let's go back to right field. Come on, that's not you. Even though she can hit the ball a mile to the left side, but tough to get out if she's got power, going oppo. I don't know what to throw to her. So love having that. What you're going to see a little bit more of is some additional speed along with Denali Shotpocker. So I'm excited to see how that all works this year, because we've got a transfer in that's got some speed, and a few freshmen that can hit and have speed as well.
Yeah, I've noticed. I went through the roster. I don't know. Good luck making the lineup. I looked at the roster. I'm like, well, they're going to start. She's going to start. And then I came up with like 15 starters or 16.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
And I'm glad you mentioned Jules Wilson. She had 321, could catch, play first, and the outfield. You even played her some in the outfield, and that's kind of the flexibility you're looking for as you try to get creative and get many bats. And then Jazz was having her best year of her career, her night career, hit 321 offensively. She's always been solid with the glove. She's right at the top on fielding percentage for first base and in the infield all-time in program history. But her bat really woke up last year, and I would imagine that's one of the reasons she's excited to be back, because she wants to kind of carry that over to this year.
Oh yeah, and that's one that I would say, just the maturity level and her ability to respond now and play, recover, play. It's so exciting to see. So I'm really going to love, just looking forward to her approach at the plate, because she's getting it, and even if she takes a swing and just misses, she comes in, and maybe in my first year here, it would have been a different response. And now it's like she comes in with a smile and she's like, I'm right on it. And that's what you need to have, because there is so much failure in the game. And we didn't even mention Carissa Ornelas. I mean, I call her Quiet Thunder, and it's for a reason, but pitchers don't want to throw to her either. And she's one of those little clutch hitters that has the 2-strike hits and the 2-out hits as well. So yeah, I may have to pull out of a hat every once in a while.
It's a good problem to have. But you're right. Carissa hit 387, slugged 500. And that was huge, because I remember going into last year, fans had questions. Well, who takes over for Cassidy Brewer and that production she had behind the plate and at the plate? And Carissa did it on both sides of that. So that was huge credit to her on that. She's a big weapon behind the plate. And as I mentioned, you have Jules, who could also back her up as a play catcher as well. And then outfield, you get Kira Klarkowski back, who's one of the great defending center fielders in the program history. She's like 2 assists away from the all-time record for an outfielder assist defensively. That shows off her arm, but she brings more to the table than that, doesn't she?
She does. As far as leadership, I don't know if I've ever been a part of somebody that has just the feel, the maturity, and she makes me feel like she's my leader. It's just amazing. I mean, we use proactive coaching, and a gentleman named Rob Miller comes in and speaks with us, and this year we had to do it via Zoom. But she wrote a letter to the team. And when you see somebody that does something for a living get blown away by something, you're like, okay, this one's pretty special. But what's so exciting for Kira is she's got leaders around her this year that have experience. And so she gets to just play a little bit. And I'm loving seeing her enjoy that and not be such a worker and a concentrator and an analyst. She's analyzing things sometimes because she's trying to be that leader that we need. But one of the best outfielders I've seen and coached. I would put her up against anybody in the nation or world. That's
Wow.
And I've been around some great ones. And just the athleticism of that individual, holy cow. So excited to see her be able to play and not have to be our only leader or our captain kind of managing things. So.
And you also have Denali Shotpacher, who could play all three outfield positions. And I'll never forget that Michigan game. She won that game, got on base, caused havoc on the base pads, and scored the winning run on the wild pitch with her instincts. Just a tremendous talent who you could plug in at any outfield position and not miss a beat, and hit her anywhere in the lineup, top, bottom of the lineup, and do what get on base get big hits for you.
Oh yeah, it's been fun to see her as well this year. She graduated last year, so the major that she had, it required a lot of time out of her, and so she'd miss at least 2 team practices a week, and she would make it up on her own time. But she was that good, missing that much practice. So we've had Denali full time this year, and I love it. Again, another voice and leader by example. One of the hardest workers and the most competitive person, I swear. So it's fun to see what she does, and she is sharpening up her game and adding a little power to it too. So it's been fun to watch her compete, especially with some of our power hitters.
Who are some of the new faces on the team that you think could contribute and really add on to this team, either be offensively, defensively, or pitching? Who are some of the new faces that the Knight fans should certainly keep an eye on as they watch, that could serve and help out, just like the new faces a year ago did?
Yeah. Well, I'll have to go with Grace Jewell, a freshman pitcher from Virginia. She is a power pitcher, a little different from the other 3 that got most of our innings last year. So we've really worked her try to get her into that starting rotation, at least in our scrimmages, so that she understands what it looks like, what it feels like, and what's required of her. And she's doing a great job of that. And she's a 2-way player as well. So she can swing it a bit too. It's just a strong player. And then you've got Kennedy Searcy and Katie Burge, 2 middle infielders, also can play the outfield, can run, left-handed hitters with some power. And, you see one of them and you think, probably a slapper. And then you get surprised when she burns you. So, and then Kennedy's she can do it all. So excited to see those 2 work their way into things and see how this whole thing goes when we play opponents. And but the thing with them, all 3 of those girls, and we have other freshmen as well, and another pitcher, Jordan L. Macy, and then Emerson Lee. I would say I thought last year was a really strong freshman class. This year is strong as well. So I think that attests to what they're doing as a program. And, when you do well, you get those type of players with you. So we have 1 transfer. Her name is Elise Volpe. She played for the junior Canadian national team and came from Bucknell. Gives Kira a run for her money, which is so awesome. I think when they were conditioning one day, Kira was getting beat. And I said, is she faster than you? And she said, Coach, I can't slide like her. I don't know, like a shuffle like her. She said, I don't know how she does it, but that's not human. It's like not humanly possible. And she's a great individual. A very mature individual, a little quiet. And I think that it's the perfect fit for our team because we do have a lot of influencers and loud people on the team. So she's really meshed well and gained the respect from the team coming in mid-year.
That's huge, and adds depth to the roster. And we look at the schedule. You got depth on the schedule, Coach. You've definitely now established yourself. I've mentioned recently on a podcast, you're like the heavyweight champion of UCF coaches comes to scheduling here, because last year you had a wild schedule, which really paid off RPI-wise, everything like that. But you've done it again, even with the challenges this year, because obviously this was not the original schedule. Just leave it as that, because with everything going on and the changes and restrictions with other conferences and teams, you had to adapt to the schedule. And yet, here you are, you've pulled it off, still a strong schedule, even with those challenges. Take us through that process first of trying to come up with a schedule that you wanted and then have to adjust and still come up with a high level of a schedule, as we'll get into.
Well, I think that you can definitely say it wasn't as difficult as it may have sounded. I mean, trying to figure out when we could play and who what days in between testing and whatnot was the most difficult thing. But the amount of strong opponents in the state of Florida, number one, made it very helpful for that. But I mean, honestly, as soon as we were told we got to stay regionally, I got on the phone and I just called everybody that I could in the SEC, Big 12, whoever, ACC. And, we were scheduled with Florida State too, but they had their situation with the 10 games. And so it just didn't work out with ours. And, but our team wants to play the best. And even when talking to our incoming freshmen or even recruits, that's what they say. They say, you guys play one of the best schedules. And when we, release the schedule to the team, they're not scared. They're smirking like, let's go, let's get ready. Let's get out on the field and practice right now. We're ready to go. And that's what it's all about. I mean, if we want to compete against the best, so that we know truly that we've reached our potential and, that we're putting in that work to get there. So I couldn't say that I did it by myself. I have a very good teacher with Brandy Stewart telling me, where we need to kind of fit people in and that kind of thing. And our assistants as well are just, everyone's up for the challenge and they love it. And so it's kind of worked out for us. It's not easy though. I'll tell you that much.
No. And I kind of want to go through some of the teams. I know that there's a couple teams people want to focused on when the schedule came up, but I want to talk like Florida Gulf Coast, top 50 in offense, runs scored and hitting with David Darios. They should have been in the tournament 2 years ago. They were in the mix. They were going to be in the mix this last year, and they're probably one of the ASUN favorites alongside Kennesaw State. Trip McKay, former Oklahoma assistant, they have a top 50 offense from 2020 back. You got McNeese State, James Landrino, and McNeese State, they've been a power in the Southland and been a team in that region where they've always been that 3 seed that teams don't want to see. They're a talented team as well. With those alone, I mean, I saw where you got like 7 teams that were in the top 50 offensively. I don't know if that was coincidence or you wanted to challenge your pitching staff, but either way, you've accomplished those things, but are also teams that are favorites to win their leagues and probably see them in postseason.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about is we want to play teams that are competing for postseason, so that when we cross that road, we're prepared. But I mean, you talk about all those teams and, I'm probably jumping the gun and saying this, but we're playing in our conference, which, the American's a very strong conference. And now we're not just playing 3 games, we're playing 4. And so in order to prepare for that and I don't care if you have a Leo White, Gianna Mancha, or Brie Vasquez on the mound, you got to be darn good to beat those hitters in 4 games. You're probably seeing them. I'm not great at math, but 12, 16 times.
Yeah.
And so if we're not preparing for that and practicing that before we get into conference, we are not going to be ready for that. So, but again, we love that challenge and we want to play teams again that are going to go and win their conferences. And so we're just blessed that, we're either playing them at home and regionally, or it's close enough for us to drive down.
You're learning this podcast deal. You know how to segue and pivot. That's good. You mentioned the 4-game conference for the America. Take us through that process as coaches, and how did that come about where you decided to go to a 4-game series?
So our conference, and I mean, we take care of our conference, and I felt very supported. We had a few schools in the conference that were unable to schedule as strong or as many games as others in the conference because of some of the rules. You know, every school, every county, every state has different rules and different protocols when it comes to tournament play versus single opponent play and whatnot. And so for us in particular, it posed a very difficult situation to try to get as many games as we could. And so we did get a last minute with New Mexico State coming in because they're going to stay in Florida, in the state of Florida, for a few weeks. So that happened, but those additional 6 games really helped us. So you're looking at, like, I think we added 10 games as soon as they made that decision, along with that series and maybe the Arizona edition. So it's just a matter of helping us out, getting our games in, and just the experience for the student athletes too. You know, we're bringing these seniors back. Well, we got to get them games then. And you got to think too, with everything COVID, that we might have some postponed games or canceled games. So just getting as many games on the schedule, as many strong games on the schedule as we could. And that's kind of where that ruling went in, and everyone supported it for some of the schools that couldn't find those extra opponents.
I like how you threw the subtle in there. Yeah, we had Arizona in there. That's no hum. That's right. That's number 3 Arizona. She just mentioned. Yeah, Arizona is scheduled to come to the Plex March 8th. This will be the 3rd Pac-12 team to play at UCF 2 years in a row. Utah was the first in 2016. Then last year you had Washington come in as the number 1 ranked team. This year it's Arizona. And that's, to explain to the audience, that is not easy to pull off. You know this from having been in the Pac-12 coaching. Pac-12 teams don't go out of their way to travel to the South very often. In fact, you got to go west. That's why Mary Nutter's been such a huge tournament out west. You did the West Coast tournament trip last year just to get games in against teams out there, in particular the Pac-12. Arizona's fortunate he's coming by. I got to give credit to Heather Tarr, because I think she was one of the first Pac-12 coaches that said, you know what, we're going to play everywhere. And I think you probably picked up on that when you were on her staff. And I think since then, some of the Pac-12s have decided to travel more. But here you are, Arizona coming in, pretty historic. Mike Condrea, the all-time winningest head coach in college softball history, 8 national titles, the brand that is Arizona. That's exciting for a lot of fans, not just UCF fans, but softball fans over in Central Florida.
Oh yeah. I mean, that comes down to also our relationship with Coach Erickson at USF. I mean, he's got a good relationship with Coach Condrea, and so I think they have a home and home agreement. I don't really know, but we benefited from that, being where we are. And I also think taking care of our conference and getting good opponents against our conference to keep that high ranking really helped. But it's just a great experience. Had we not had them come in, our team may never play them, in all of their 4 years, if the way some things work out. So we do like to, go to the West Coast, like you said, and get those opportunities to play teams that we don't usually get to play. And that's what it's all about, is playing those teams that are traditionally in the World Series, because that's where we want to see ourselves. And unless you play against them and learn how to beat them, you're not going to get there. So it's fun to be able to host them and compete against them, and just for the game, the sport, our community, and hopefully with the amount of fans we're allowed to have, it's going to be a great crowd. But also the ESPN Plus, and it'll be a great time for us to be able to have that opportunity on our campus and in our stadium.
You mentioned Ken Erickson. Obviously, used to be on Mike Condrea's staff when they were on the U.S. Olympic team. They're good friends, helping out in making this happen. And that's something I spoke to Tim Walton recently, the Florida Gator head coach. He talked about how all you coaches in the state have kind of work together and help each other out. Like UCF and Florida. This is the 20th season of UCF softball. It'll be the first season where UCF and Florida play a home and home in the same season. Usually it's one at one park and then the next year the other. And Tim talked about that being able to reach out to you and say, hey, let's get a home and home. Let's work together on this. We all want to play. Have you noticed that this coaching fraternity, you've all come in a way bonded even more just because you're all going through this and helping each other out?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, first and foremost, we're trying to do the best by our student athletes. And so, it's going to be those two games are going to be awesome, tough games. But we want to give them the opportunity to do that. And Coach Walton was great as well. And like you said about what he had mentioned, we could wait till the last minute and get as many opponents as we could in, and then say, okay, where can we play a home and a home? So just to be able to do those things and help each other out. And, like I said, Coach Erickson helping us out and us helping out any others that we could. It not only is helping the sport, but every student athlete that's in there, and especially those fifth year seniors that we're bringing back. Like, I just find it silly to bring them back if we're not trying to help each other out in that way.
A little trivia as far as Mike Condrea. So this is this hopefully will be the second meeting all time between UCF and Arizona. Mike Condrea, this will be his third time going against UCF. In 2008, he was the Olympic head coach. They played UCF in Altamont Springs, part of that Olympic tour that they used to do back then. They played in Altamont Springs. Allison Kime, who was the UCF Athletic Hall of Famer, shut him out. It was 0-0 into the bottom of the sixth when a young lady named Jessica Mendoza had a 2-out, 2-strike RBI hit. Got the 1 run in. That's all the USA would need. They win 1-0. They beat them. Mendoza strikes again, takes it to Kime. You and Allison can relate to that, right? You can relate. You both have to deal with Jessica Mendoza giving you heartbreak.
Oh, gosh. Yes, for sure. Gosh, I didn't actually know about that 08 game, so that's awesome info. But Kime definitely made it through the game longer than I ever did anytime facing those teams. So kudos to her. But yes, Jessica Mendoza, I don't know. I tried to walk her and gave up a home run. So I got no scouting tips. I know. I got no scouting tips for you on this one.
All right, so you and Allison can kind of share, heartbreak on that. But Allison will never forget. She's always told the story that one of her highlights of her career was after the game, Mike Condrea singled her out and said, "That's one of the best games I've ever seen someone pitch against us." And that really helped, as far as the rest of her senior year that year. So Mike, that was cool for Mike to do that with her. So that's a pretty exciting schedule. Also, you're going to South Carolina and Ole Miss. SEC their flavor on the doing it. What's unique is Ole Miss is going on that back end there. I think it's your bye week, right, in the league?
Yes, both of us have the same bye weekend, and so we were able to work that out. So I mean, I have a good relationship with their coach, and she came down here when she was with her previous school, and so love competing against her. They're always great games, and so we're looking forward to doing that. We tried to make that trip last year; it just got cut short. We were actually on our way there when we got told to come back to Orlando. So, but again, same thing of you never know in this game where you'll get sent for postseason or if you get to host. And I think putting us in places and opportunities and experiences where we get to play in all these different stadiums so that the wow factor isn't there, that because we've already been there and done it. But looking forward to the South Carolina trip. It's going to be interesting because we're all going to be wearing masks on the bus and maybe 2 buses and spread out, and maybe may have to pull over just so we can have a water break. I don't know what it's going to look like, but we're playing and we're doing it. So that's what's so exciting.
Last question. What is going to be the keys now? Once you get into the field, it's going to be, unique because you haven't played a game against somebody else in over 300 days, basically. It's going to be unique. So I don't know if because you didn't have the normal fall and spring, do you have to be more patient early on, or as far as where the team is compared to where you would want them to be? But what's going to be the keys once you do get games going on and playing and on the field? What's going to be the keys to be successful and accomplish your internal goals?
I think one of the biggest keys is remembering who we are, regardless of all the noise around us. And that goes from playing an opponent. I mean, yes, it is different when you play a different team and not yourself, but really, I mean, we really work on playing against our best self, and not seeing a name on the shirt or a face on the on that player, but just getting back to what got us to this point, what got UCF back in the top 25. And I may have been a little firm, and I think that it's fair enough to say this, a week ago, and I said, hey, it took us a long time and hard work to get there, after a few years, and it can be taken away like that. So remember what you're focusing on and where we came from and why we play this game and how we do it. So that's going to be a big key, is just to not let ourselves get too big or bigger than the moment, and to enjoy it, because when it comes down to it, I don't mean to get like, I guess like too, I don't know what the word is that I'm looking for here, but just, we're playing softball during a pandemic. Like, we're blessed, we're able to do that, and our medical staff, everybody is just doing such a good job at keeping our student athletes safe. So continuing to just be disciplined in that and recognize that is going to be huge. And then I think what's a really new one for us is all the double headers we're playing.
Yeah.
And we may play a double header, but it's usually two different opponents. When you play the same opponent twice, it's not easy. It doesn't matter who you're playing. And so that's going to be the challenge. And we're trying to figure out what that looks like from a catching standpoint, a pitching standpoint, just, some of our older players, are they going to need a day off or a game off? So I think those are going to be some of the things. And then just remembering that, though it was 300 days ago, you get on the bike and you ride. So, but those are the things I would say. I don't know if that's what you were looking for, Elo. Hopefully.
Yeah, no, that's good. And appreciation, right? We're all appreciative that, you're on the field again, an opportunity to play and have fun with it. And at the same time, don't, take it for granted. And I think we all kind of hopefully have figured that out through the last year here, not taking things for granted. So it should be interesting. You mentioned the double headers. I think that's going to help you by scheduling those double headers early. It's going to get you ready for conference, because you're going to have to play a double header during conference series week. So that's probably good prep too.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm thinking about playing 4 games on a Saturday and Sunday against the same team. I've never been a part of anything like that. So it's going to be fun and interesting, but it's softball.
You realize Stephanie Best will be listening to this, and some of the original team, and they're going to be laughing because they used to play a bunch of doubleheaders all the time. So they don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear it. They're like, whatever. That's like,
We did that.
Yeah, the old timers, the legends, they could tell you there from the first few years here now as we're into our 20th season. Coach Bear, Cindy Ball-Malone here joining us. Coach, thanks so much for joining us here. Excited to see you all back on the field, and good luck, and be safe, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me.